Hello, hello everyone. Can you hear me? If yes, please press. Okay, sound plus. Yeah, please press plus. Okay, perfect. All right. So my name is Alexander Shabokov, and I'm a former graduate of ICEF MSc program in financial economics. And today I'll be talking about like the program in general and like macroeconomics course that we teach here. And yeah, currently I'm a class teacher for macroeconomics for master students. So yeah, that's why I'll be talking about this. All right, so let me start about some brief overview of the program for those who don't know the details. And now I start from the details about ICEF in general. So at ICEF we have more than 1,000 students, about 5 to 10% of which are international students. Also, we have quite a big faculty. We have more than 150 professors, including those who have international PhD and are hired at the global job market. And my personal view as a former student is that the faculty and professors are particular strengths of ICEF, and because they're very high skilled professionals, and with them you can do research on many topics. So yeah, my view is that like the faculty is one of the strongest in Russia for sure, and I think it is very high ranked in Europe and worldwide. So what kind of programs we have is that we have 2 degree programs, both of which are taught in English. So one of them is HSC and University of London Bachelor Double Degree Program. This is for bachelor students. And the second one is for master students. This is a program in financial economics. And this program was ranked as one of top 100 programs as masters in finance in both 2019 and 2020, which certifies the quality of the program. Also, research is a big part of the ICEF life. So here we have International Laboratory of Financial Economics. Our professors have publications in top international journals, in particular like top 5 journals in economics, top 3 journals in financial economics, and many other high-ranked journals. Also here at ICEF we have annual International Moscow Finance Conference, as well as annual ICEF International Applied Economics Conference. So that's why, like, if you're looking for some research and you're really interested in doing research and you want to know more, you're very welcome, because research is an important part of our life. So more about the program for Masters in Financial Economics. So the program has 5 core courses, which are micro and macroeconomics, also econometrics, asset pricing, and corporate finance. So these are core courses that are taught in the first semesters and during the first year, and the corporate finance is taught during the first semester and the second year. Also, we have a bunch of elective courses and optional courses, more than 12 applied courses, which are taught by both PG faculty of the college, and as well as some MBA teaching faculty and some finance practitioners. So basically people from business and from the industry who know the particular things because they work with them in the real life. So more about the program. So it is a 2 years full program. So these 120 credits. So the language of the program is English, and also which I see as one of the advantages of the program is that it is a we have double diploma opportunities and a variety of partner universities, and so you can do some exchange programs abroad. So we have Lewis University in Italy, Erasmus University in Netherlands, Tilburg University in Netherlands, and University of Essex in Great Britain. So these are the main universities. I mean, not the main, but one of that are most popular among the students. But there are other universities with which you can do exchange program. We also have double degrees, because if you choose a double degree track, you can get a second diploma from a European university. And regarding degrees that you can obtain here is that we basically get master's degree from HSE plus a letter of validation from LSE, which does academic support for the program. And if you do a double degree program, so basically you get a degree from ICEF at HSC, and you get the second degree from some other European university. Right. So talking more about career path and what opportunities you can expect after completing the program is, again, be an economist or analyst in investment banking, strategic consulting, and real economy worldwide. And also many of the graduates apply for further studies, so basically they continue their studies at the PhD programs in the top universities around the world. And those students then mainly choose academic career. Regarding my personal experience and experience of my classmates, so many of them work in risks. So basically, if you look at the treasury departments of many top banks in Russia, there are a lot of ICEF graduates there. And basically, in general, many people work in this sphere of banking and finance. So the tuition fee for the program is 430,000 rubles, all $6,500. Also, there are some financial support that you can get here. It can be of two types. Basically, it is ICEF scholarship, and the second one is VTB Bank scholarship. If you have if you want to get some additional information about the program or about the admission, so for the program information, you can visit the website at HSE. For the admission, you can write at the email that is presented on the slide. All right, so a little bit about myself. So I'm an ICEF graduate of 2018. Before this, I studied in St. Petersburg at St. Petersburg State University of Economics, and I graduated from economics program in 2016. And so right after it, I applied to master's program at ICEF, so I got into the program. And after completing the program, I started my PhD in economics here at here at HSE, at High School of Economics, at the Department of Economic Science, at the Faculty of Economic Science. And basically, during my PhD, I continue research with my advisor from ICEF, who is Professor Dara Paris. So currently, I do a lot of teaching at ICEF and at HSC in general. So I teach from this year macroeconomics at master's program. I also teach derivatives as well as monetary economics for bachelor students, and I teach macroeconomics at the research program at the Faculty of Economic Science at High School of Economics. Regarding my work experience, I worked at the Central Bank of the Russian Federation. It was a summer internship in 2017, and there I worked at the Department of Consumer Protection. And basically, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but recently we have a new law in Russia which guarantees that essentially anyone who takes a mortgage and for some reason have problems with paying the mortgage, for example, he gets sick and gets fired, he may ask officially his creditor for payment holidays. And so basically, 2 years ago, so the law was passed just this year, but 2 years ago I was working and helping the people from the central bank on this law. So basically, they're collecting information and analyzing the experience of other countries who already had this law in their countries. And so I was working on this, and now, surprisingly for me, 2 years after, as they introduced the law, basically based on the research that we done before. So also this year, this summer, the last one, I was working at the Central Bank of Chile. So the last year, yes, in the last summer, and there I worked at the Department of Financial Stability, and basically I was doing research there. And also, I have to say thank you to ICEF for this opportunity, because without ICEF I could not get there, because my research advisor here, Professor Dara Pires, had a joint project with a uh, Central Bank of Chile employee, and so basically I went there to help on this research project, to finish some of the things that I was doing here before. And also during this year, starting from September 2018, I'm working at the International Laboratory of Financial Economics, which is a part of ICEF. So yeah, talking more about International Laboratory of Financial Economics, so the main areas of research that you can find there is finance, banking, and macroeconomics, financial markets and the efficiency, and the last key area is corporate finance and governance. And so my personal research at the laboratory is about financial stability and macroprudential regulation. Do you guys know anything what like financial stability is, or what is macroprudential regulation is? So we can just type in chat and so they could see your answers and maybe tell you more. All right, anyone else? Okay, so basically, when we talk about financial stability, there are different definitions of these, but generally we can see the financial stability as the absence of default. That, like on the loans that are extended in the economy, like the average default rate does not increase significantly. And macroprudential regulation is a regulation that aims the providing of financial stability. In particular, the government and like the central bank can impose some regulation on the economy and financial system, preventing banks from taking too much risks and giving too much loans, especially risky loans, which may be defaulted in the future. So basically, by providing this regulation and by its actions, the central bank can provide financial stability in the economy. So, for example, if we look at this graph, so here I presented the data for Russia from the first quarter of 2001 to the second quarter of 2018. And so here we see as the blue dotted line is output in the economy, the red one is consumption of the economy, so the gray one are loans, green one deposits, and black one is oil price, international oil price. And all of these data as a percentage of end of 2013, which is taken as 100%. So the key point here is that, as you can see, like at the end of 2008, when there was a huge, if you look here, so as you can notice, there was a huge drop in the oil prices around the world, and so exactly at the same time, you can see that there is a drop in both GDP and output in the country, as well as consumption. Also, there was some reaction from loans, but the reaction was kind of a bit lagged, because first there was a drop, and then because the loans were already given, and so then there was some contraction in loans. As you can see, when the oil prices increase for our country, we can notice that there is some increase in the output and consumption, as well as there is an an extension of loans. And if we look somewhere from here, which is 2014 and later periods, we can see that like after a drop in the oil prices again, like we noticed that there was some fall in the GDP in the country, the output, as well as drop in consumption. So basically, like, the question that we want to understand, the question that we ask as that we want to understand is, suppose we consider Russia, the income. Yeah, here you're right. The fall in GDP was not as big, but still, here we just consider the GDP. But there is another component which is not included here, is non-performing loans. Non-performing loans essentially. Yes, I totally agree with you that like at that time, at the end of 2014, the relative drop was not as big, but still the consequences can be kind of prolonged in time, and so you may not see the drop right at the time, but the effects may appear later in the future. So my point was that even though, like, after experiencing a drop in oil prices, what happens? Sorry, these variables. I think you didn't type everything that you wanted. No, definitely there is some correlation. That's the point. Like there is some correlation between oil prices, output, and consumption in Russia, and like in general, we say that in macroeconomics, and if you consider in different countries, there will be correlation between output and consumption. And the thing that we want to understand is, suppose there is some oil shortage occurring, because this is something that we as a country cannot affect, and so this is purely exogenous for us. So then what happens is actually the income of the government falls, because oil revenue is still an important part of the government budget. Yet you can say now that this issue may not be so important because we now have a budget rule, which basically says that if we get the oil prices higher than a certain level, then we just save this extra earnings and spend up to some limit. So nowadays, the effect can be not that strong, but before the introduction of this, the effect of the oil prices on the government budget and GDP was much stronger. And so my point was that suppose we notice that there is some drop in the oil prices and reduction in income of the government, which later will cause a drop in the government spending most likely, and this of course will affect the aggregate demand in the economy. And so like we should expect in the future some drop in the GDP as well as consumption. And so what we may expect is that given that now like the GDP is smaller than it was before, or it is not growing at least, most likely the profits of firms also fall. What happens is that then some of them will have to default on the loans that they took before. So GDP, sorry, where do you see GDP? Is it somewhere written? Or if what I'm referring to was GDP, gross domestic product. Yeah. All right. Regarding the previous question, yes, exactly. Like the key purpose of the macroprudential policy and policies, if there are many of them, is to prevent a country from financial crisis, because like basically in the essence of any crisis, there is default, most likely, because if there is default, then like the crisis can be amplified to many agents of the economy. And so going back to what I was talking about, so if profits of firms may decrease, and then what we can see most likely that the default rate in the economy on average will increase, which does have effect on other agents in the economy, because, for example, if you look on banks, like the default of firms then go to the bank's balance sheet, and then like what happens to the bank, they need some additional funds, and it is not clear where they'll find them and how much they'll have to pay for these funds. And so basically the issue is that the central bank need to understand what happens to, like, given the external conditions like oil prices and other things, they need to understand like what's going on in the economy and what policies optimally could provide the financial stability in the economy. For example, they can do something like policies that prevent banks from giving too much of unsecured loans, because usually on unsecured loans we see most of the defaults. And so, yeah, basically by conducting these policies, they can reduce the risk in the economy by reducing future expected default rates. Okay, so that was about the research that we do and like the things that we try to understand. And now let me jump to the content of the course, of the macroeconomics that we teach here. So basically, starting from this year, the course is split in 3 parts. Before it was in 2 parts. So the first part, yes, this is about master course in macroeconomics. So the first part of the course, I'm not giving you the full like list of topics that are covered. Here I just present like the main ones, please, the ones that I see as main ones. So like the important part of in the first part of the course is the growth models, which are essentially the solo model and its extensions. I don't know if you're familiar with this. So basically the solo model looks at the economy, like at the total output of the economy as some function of the technology rate, the labor, or population if you want, and the capital stock in the economy. And so it considers like, given the technology level in the economy and the population growth rate in the economy, like what will happen in the economy and what will be its equilibrium, like how much, what should be the level of consumption per capita, which means per person, and output per person in this economy. Then like another important part in this part of the course are dynamic optimized macroeconomic models, which basically consider the optimal choice of individuals. So first we consider just some exogenous processes for the economy in the growth models. Then we introduced agents, basically households, which are people who make decisions. And so the typical decision that an individual makes is like the distribution of his income, or earning if you want, between consumption and saving, or consumption and investment. And so these models essentially help us to understand how different policies, including fiscal policy, like taxes imposed on individuals, affect these decisions. Because obviously, if you want to invest in something, like if you decide to have your own enterprise, the higher the tax rate, the lower your incentive to invest or start a business. And so basically these models give an insight of like how households and individuals make these decisions and what kind of things can affect their decision. And also, like as a part of of basically this is the first semester. Part 1 is essentially the first semester of the macro course. And so as part of this, we also study money and macro models. So in the second part, we start studying the business cycle dynamics. About your question, as far as I remember, we don't cover this model in the growth models here. It's not part of the program, at least not the main one. Maybe when there is some additional time, it may be covered, but not the main one. All right, so in the second semester, we basically start from studying the business cycle dynamics and real business cycle models, and this is what we cover right now. Do you know what business cycles are? Maybe someone could share his or her knowledge about this. All right, so basically by business cycles, we understand the fluctuations probably, yep. Yes, yes. But when we talk about business cycles, we mean some particular thing. Because usually what you see in the data is some behavior, as we saw before. For example, this one. So there is some behavior of output, for example, which is the blue line, or consumption, which is red line. And so what we want to understand, basically, of course, like there is some trend, and you clearly can see that like over time it is growing. But the question is, if we subtract this growth component, which is trend component, what will be the cycle? Yes, exactly, kind of booms and depression. So as I was saying, so you take some time series, which is GDP or consumption, and what we want to do is we want to extract the cycle component from this one. For example, if you look here, of course, like there was some trend, upward trend, and then, as you can see, obviously there is a huge drop, relatively huge drop in the GDP, which is the cycle here. And also like here, around here, because the trend is still growing, but here there is some downturn of the GDP, which again implies most likely some cycle. And so, given the cycles, we want to understand like where the economy now, like whether it is growing or in the depression, and most importantly, like why do you think we need to understand whether the economy now is booming, is growing, or it is currently in depression or recession, if you want? Why is it important to understand this? So any guess from you guys? Yes, I could even like say even two, like there is the growth or decline. All right. So yeah, we know that. Like, but why do we need to know whether it is growth now or it is a decline in the economy? Why is it important? But what do you do? I mean, like, suppose you want, because it's not clear for me what exactly you mean here. Alright, like if you don't put them in the wrong period, what do you do with your money? Generally speaking, like, why we need to understand the cycles and the exact point at which we are now is that it is important for policies, because if the economy is growing and or like even like overheating right now, so it is important that the government, like the fiscal authority and monetary authority, which is generally considered as the central bank, they do understand exactly where we are now and conduct policies that correspond to the current state. Because when the economy is overheating, it is important to introduce some restrictive policies that will restrict the growth and prevent the economy from overheating. Or if the economy is in decline, it is important for them to introduce policies that will stimulate the economy and the growth in the economy. And essentially, business cycle dynamics helps us to understand where we are now, and real business cycle models try to explain these cycles. So basically, why there is either growth or recession in the economy, like what drives the recession or the growth. Then we also cover search and theoretic models, which is essentially the labor market models, which model the labor market from two parts. From the part of firms that want to like hire new people and they post vacancies searching for people, and from the point of view of people who are now unemployed and who are looking for jobs. And so basically, yeah, these models answer us how this optimal decision about the wage rate in the economy and the equilibrium levels of employment and unemployment will be determined. All right, so, and in the last part of the course, we cover some international accounting, which is, I think, familiar for most of you. We cover things like exports, imports, current account, trade balance, and stuff like this. Then we expanded to international exchange and risk sharing from the point of view that you as an individual can invest or buy shares in the companies from other countries, and so basically then like your income will be dependent not only on the income that you get in your country, but also on the income of other countries. And so basically this is kind of the mix of macro international finance and finance, where you can see the portfolio for an agent who wants to have shares in different countries and different companies, that essentially helps them to diversify future risks. That if there is some risk and fall in income in one country, it will most likely it will be compensated from the growth in income in some other country. And also as part of this, we consider financial stability and macro and microprudential policies, which I already discussed before. All right, so any questions on this, on the key content of the course? Not really. Regarding the Phillips curve, as it is, because most likely what we refer now is the bachelor's level material. So here the stuff and model that you'll be studying is a little bit more advanced. And in the real business cycle models in RBC, you can, by extending them to New Keynesian models, which I didn't include here, because New Keynesian models are just the expansion of RBC models, you can get the Phillips curve, but it will be slightly different from what you taught most likely. And answering the question, how many percent of time will we study risks? So this is minor part of the course, because I would say that this part one is about like one semester, And the second semester is split between the second and the third parts. And like risks and international accounting, I would say about most likely like 40% of the second part of the course, like of the second semester. So, which means that like part 3 is about 15-20% on average from the whole course, because as I said before, I didn't include all the topics here, just the main ones, again, like from my point of view, the main ones. Okay, here I want to quickly talk about the key difficulties that students face. Basically, from my experience as the one who was studying at the program and the one who teaches now, there are two key difficulties that students face. Because we have usually relatively a lot of people coming from having just mathematics and physics background, so basically they're very good at mathematics, but the lack of some economic logic and intuition, which makes them a bit struggling with solving the problems, because usually they can solve the problem mathematically and understand it mathematically, but they have problems with understanding of the economic logic behind this and economic nature. That's the first type of problem that some people may have. And the second type of problem, which is from my point of view is more common, is a big math background, because not in many universities there is very good not in many universities they teach very good and profound math courses. That's why students often come not very well prepared. And of course, here, like all the things that you need to know, like for math, and as well as economic theory and economic intuition behind the models, all of it will be taught. But given the time constraint, because there is a lot of material and the time is very limited, it is often very hard to learn everything so fast. And so that's why, from my personal experience, because I didn't have very good math background from my bachelor program, and I was really struggling during the first semester. So I would advise you to maybe refresh or to read some new books, which I'll talk about later. And yeah, talking about the essential math skills that you need to know. Yeah, sure. No, we don't have research projects as part of the course, at least as part of the macro course. In some of the other courses, like international finance, and basically we have a separate course on international finance, which is kind of a continuation of the topics that I discussed here. Yeah, there you have a small research project, I would call it, because what we do is students are given. No, I wouldn't say at the last part of the education, but talking about this particular, concerning macro and macro finance, yes, at the end, because basically the course is composed of lectures and seminars. So during the semester you also do some home assignments, but these are mainly about the theories and models don't. So, okay, good. Okay, so going back to the math skills that are important, basically from my point of view, there are two main things that you need to know. First is the calculus of several variables, which is basically you need to know how to differentiate and integrate functions. So these for sure you have to know very well. Of course, I'm not talking about double integrals, but basic things you have to know very well and be very comfortable with them. And the second one is a knowledge of constraint optimization, because most of the models are solved by applying the method of Lagrange multipliers. Did any of you learn it in your previous courses? Maybe micro or macro? Because this constraint optimization is very widely applied in both macro and micro courses, and yeah, that you'll be doing here a lot if you go to this program. And so yeah, if you think that it takes you some time to understand and learn, so my advice would be to look at the things, to refresh them, so that you at least have some understanding of what it is about. Talking about knowledge of constraint optimization. Yes. Essential math skills. I'm talking about macro. I mean, like, I'm talking about the math skills that you need to have for, like, to pass the exam successfully. It will be important for both macro courses and micro courses, and for many other courses like financial economics, asset pricing, because basically constraint optimization is at the core. And so if you're studying at the math university, I guess you won't have problems with math background, but you may have some problems with economic intuition and logic. But again, as I said, like, all of it is taught here, so you may just read some books on economics to get some sense of what it is about, and then, like, here you'll learn much deeper what it is. All right, so do you have any questions on this slide? Because if not, I'll go to the next one, which is on the literature and, like, yes. It can be found in the appendix of economics books. Yep. And now I'll talk about them. Yeah, if you guys have any questions on any previous slides. So, like, practice and orthogonality, like on math course, because here, like, during the first semester, you also have a math course, and yeah, you'll need to know them. But before, like, again, like, they'll teach you them, but it will be done very fast. And so yeah, it's better if you have a little bit of a background in this. And, like, if you need to know vectors and orthogonality from macro, I would say no, but you definitely will need to know this for econometrics courses. Econometrics and for financial economics a little bit. But for macro and micro courses, no. Okay, yeah, guys, if you have any questions on some previous slides, feel free to ask. We can always go back, and I'll try to answer all the questions. Okay, so talking about the literature, from my point of view, it is like there are two key books which are essential for understanding the material. The first one is John's book, which is Introduction to Economic Growth, and basically it has chapters on solo models and the models that are extensions of solo model. And the second one, which is a main book essentially, the David Romer book on advanced macroeconomics. So this one, as far as I remember, also does include the solo model, but it has all other topics studied in the course, like endogenous growth models, RBC as far as I remember, consumption theory, also these labor market models. So basically, like, David Romer book will be your main book if you come here to study macro. I mean, study the program and, like, in your macro course. And my advice, if you want, like, to get some taste of and sense of what the material like, I would really advise you to find this book and maybe go through some chapters, because as far as I remember, this book is available online. And my advice also would be to, like, at the end of the chapter of each chapter, in the book he has the problem sets. So take a look at the problem sets, and you can also find some solution to the problem sets. Just like take a look, and this will get you a sense of what kind of questions you can be asked and what kind of problems you'll be solving here, and the theories that you'll need to learn. Because especially if you look at them now and you don't feel comfortable, of course all of this will be taught, but I would advise you like maybe to read a little bit to try to understand something and to understand like whether you want to learn this or not. There are some additional books which are basically the extension of the previous ones. And yeah, by the way, regarding the like mathematical appendix, as far as I remember, in the David Roma Advanced Macroeconomics book, you have this mathematical appendix where he does have these methods. And also in the additional reading in the Barrow and Javier Sala Martin, which is the first book. So the topics covered are very close to the one covered in the Roma book. And also, as far as I can remember, it also has mathematical appendix. So for the appendix, you can check this one. But to my taste, like I would prefer Roma book to Barrow and Sly Martin. Also, you can like because it is all personal and like everyone has his own or her own taste. So if you don't like the book that I mentioned before, you can try to read Blanchard and Fisher book, which is Lectures on Macroeconomics, wonderful book. Also, maybe book by Obstfeld and Rogoff, Foundations of International Macroeconomics. And you can also try Stochastic Dynamic Macroeconomics by Gronk and Sandler. But if you want to look through, I would really advise you firstly to go through the Jones book and Roma book, both of which are in the essential reading here. All right, so do you have any questions on this? And the Russian language. I think Jones' book has a Russian, translated version to Russian. I'm almost sure that it does exist, so you may try to find this. And about Roma book, I doubt it. I really doubt it. And anyway, my advice would be to try to read them, because in the program you'll be studying in English like all the time, and so because we don't teach here in Russian, that's why like because like for example from my experience during my bachelor's I also didn't study in English, and that's why it took me some time to get adapted and get used to studying in English. And so yeah, if you think you're not very comfortable with English now, I advise you to read the material, some of the chapters, because he'll just at least learn some of the words, some of the vocabulary that is typically used, and then it will really help you during the courses, during your studying. Okay, so about the pre-last question, so once again, I would try, yes. Yep. To you, Ruslan, I would advise, yes, try to find this Jones book, Introduction to Economic Growth, in Russian. Try, yes, to read it and like then read it in English, and then Roma book, because like mainly all the material is the material that you'll be studying here. That's why you need to know it. And regarding the Sadester Hammond book, honestly, I'm not familiar with this one, so I cannot say anything about this. Right, so any other questions? Okay, if not, I'll go to the next slide, which is some example that I want to give you that is that can be explained by models that we study here. So suppose you're an ICEF Embassy graduate 2022, and so you start your professional career, and so as you just graduate from your program, and so you don't have much money yet, or maybe you do, I don't know. So suppose you don't, and so like you start your career and like you'll get your first payment in 1 month, and so now like for to cover your basic expenses, you need to get some credit cards and maybe take some loan from the bank. And so my question is, how does the interest rate on the credit funds that you need to take from the bank affect the optimal decision about how much loan to take and essentially how much to consume now, because you take this loan to consume, and how much to like do you want like how this interest rate affect the optimal decision basically about consumption and amount of hours that you work. So basically how this interest rate affects your decision about the working hours that you work to repay the loan in the future. So yeah, I'll wait a little bit, and so I want you to try to answer this question. Depends on inflation and deflation. Yeah, but consider just the interest rate. I mean, like my question is like, so like when you take a loan, you have to pay some interest rate, and how does this interest rate affect the optimal decision between consumption in the hours that you'll have to work to repay this loan? Okay, I'll wait for like another minute. No, it doesn't necessarily work more. I mean, like obviously, like the higher the interest rate, the more you have to repay. But the higher the interest rate doesn't mean you will actually decide to work more. No, my logic is like the higher the interest rate, given some true. Of course, it depends on your preferences to consume. But my point is like when you take the loan, the higher the interest rate, given a lot of things equal, the more you'll have to repay. And my question is, how does this interest rate affect your optimal decision between consumption and labor? By labor, I mean like the amount of hours that you'll have to work. Yes, it actually does. It does play an important role. Uh, yes, most likely you'll want to consume less. Okay, let me wait like 10-15 seconds more, and then I'll explain the logic of the answer. Okay, basically the logic is follows. So No, I wouldn't say that high interest rate implies high amount of labor. Because look, when we talk about labor, it means like as your day is limited, the more you work, the less you rest. And you as an individual get utility because in economics we always talk, we use this definition of utility that like, and we care about utility. So basically, when we consider macro models, individuals get the utility from consumption and leisure. And leisure is essentially one minus like the opposite of the hours, number of hours you work. So essentially like the rest of the day that you don't work. And so you get utility from this. And so what happens is that like the higher the interest rate, the more you have to repay in the future. Which means like the more you have to earn to repay this debt. And so because you optimally choose between consumption and leisure, like if the interest rate will be high enough, at some point you'll decide to work less. You'll say, okay, I better reduce my consumption slightly. I better don't buy coffee today, but rest another hour at home. And the logic is this. I mean, like, of course, I give some simple examples, which may be a bit trivial, but if you consider on a larger scale, the interest rate, the implied interest rate will affect the individual's decision regarding optimal consumption and labor. And so generally we say that the higher the interest rate on the loan, the less your incentive to work is, because like the higher fraction of your future income you'll have to pay, which means you have like even the same number of hours that you work, you have to pay more. And so it does reduce your incentive to work at all. And so you come back to the decision that maybe you should reduce your consumption slightly. And so things like this started in the cash in advance model. So basically, this model tells us how the interest rate, which is set by the monetary fiscal authority, or if you want the central bank, affects the optimal decisions of people, and so how it does affect, and if it does affect the output of the economy, inflation rate, and so on and so forth. So this is like one of the problems that, like the application of the theories that we learn to the real life problems. Okay, any questions on this one? I wouldn't say bonus, but yes, like look, if you take a loan and the higher the interest rate, it means that like the amount you have to repay is higher, which means like now instead of like working 40 hours a week, you have to work like 42 hours, given that your wage rate doesn't change. And of course, you as an individual don't want to work more. And so what may happen is that you may decide to consume less, which means to take a smaller size of loan, but to work the same hours as you were working before. That's the point. And so what we get to is that the interest rate, which is essentially set by the monetary fiscal authority, affects the optimal decision of individuals and affects the economy as a whole. And this can be studied from the framework that you will be studying during the program. Okay, any other questions on this slide? Okay. So here, this is the last slide, and this is contact information. So here there is an admission email. So if you have any questions about admission, you should message them. And also here provide my personal email, which is alex.m.sherbokov@gmail.com. So you have some questions about the program, or I don't know. I mean, the program, like from the point of view of a person who studied before this program and is teaching now. So if you have some questions to me or like about future career opportunities that you may have after completing the program, or some other things like how it's better to prepare for the program and what are the difficulties you may face not only in macro but in other subjects, or if you want to get some additional links and references to literature, feel free to contact me. I'll be glad to help you. And so, yes, I guess that's it. So if you have any questions right now, so feel free to ask. If not, goodbye and have a good evening.